Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe. Right now we're looking at, we are in the lifestyle segment bit, and today we're looking at businesses. We do know that many people out there, not just in Kenya, but globally, have lost their jobs. Others have closed down businesses. Others are, grappling with the issue of reduced revenue. And of course, for some, they're just trying to figure out, what next? What do I do? And we have a gentleman here, Ken Gichinga, he's an economist, and of course, just a little bit more about him. He is the chief economist at Mentoria Economics. I know, Ken, many people have been affected, but first, before we go to the discussion, I don't know, how are you doing? How are you coping with the whole COVID-19 impact?
Well, thank you, and good morning, Leah.
Good morning.
Definitely, this is an interesting time in the history of our country. Plenty of disruption in the economy, plenty of disruption in business. So even as an economist, I've been studying the Kenyan economy for the last 10 years. And I can tell you this, we've never seen anything like this. So I think it's a time for new beginnings. It's a time for soul searching. And I think we'll see the silver lining will be, we might see a lot of innovation coming out as people start thinking out of the box.
Well, Ken, if you can just take us through briefly on the impact of COVID-19 on the not just really the economy, but let's talk about businesses. What has been what have you witnessed thus far?
Well, obviously, what we call demand for goods and services has gone to an all-time low. If you look at, part of the measures of social distancing has meant people prefer to stay home. So obviously, segments such as hospitality have taken such a big hit. People are not meeting as much as they should. People are actually just focusing on spending their money on food and rent. So all the other segments of the economy that depend on demand from people have taken a huge beating. Now, obviously, this is a temporary situation, and we expect things to change. But there's some feeling that even once we reopen the economy, things might be fundamentally different, and we might not quite go back to the situation we once knew pre-COVID.
What, in your view, what will be the new normal post-COVID?
Well, I think digital. Interviews such as these that used to be face-to-face in the studio, now everything has moved towards a digital platform. So I think businesses that took advantage of digital infrastructure are going to do much better. Companies where people are able to work from home and leverage on digital infrastructure are going to do very well. But you'll find industries that had not invested much in ICT, people who had not thought about the future of work, will really have a hard time trying to adjust to the new normal. But I can tell you the new normal will be very, very much digital.
Okay. And when you say difficult, that is not such good news, Ken, for many people who are hoping to hear some good news from you today. But you know what,
Well, definitely. I don't want to be a prophet of doom. I always like to prefer to be an agent of hope. I think one of the big things that we'll notice is there'll be a whole layer of innovation that will come out of this. People will think differently. People might lose their jobs. That's one of sort of like the unfortunate realities. But people might also start new interesting industries, new interesting businesses that might also actually lead to much more fulfilling lives. So it's a moment of transition, and I always say when one door closes, another door opens. So for a lot of people, this could be the beginning of a new door opening, and people trying out skills that they had never ever tried before.
Well, Ken, as we talk about new doors, for someone who has lost their job, because many people have lost jobs, others, they have had to close down their businesses. What type of businesses would you say are ideal for anyone right now that someone can venture into based on your research on the ground and just your analysis of the current status?
Well, to answer that question, first of all, you might want to look at the economic survey that was released about 2 months ago. 1 month ago, that really talked about the performance of the economy in 2019. So obviously that's pre-COVID. And just looking at some of the statistics, some of the key growth sectors, we saw accommodation and food services, grew up by 10%. We saw ICT going up by 8%. Areas such as transport and storage going up by 7%. Wholesale retail was also growing at 6.6%, and construction at 6.4%. Some people criticize these statistics. People say sometimes these are government statistics which don't sometimes always reflect the reality on the ground, and maybe there is a case for that. But I can tell you for sure that the services sector tends to do very well in Kenya. It's the growth, all the 5 sectors that I've named to you, whether it's financial services, ICT, fintech, all these are services sectors. So we'll definitely see the services sectors are doing much better, and they tend to use digital platforms much more. But for me, I always say, when you're thinking about which business to go to, obviously it's important to look at which are the growth sectors, but it's equally important to also ask yourself personally, what are my strengths and my weaknesses? Because yes, you can go into a sector such as fintech, that is a big growth sector, but maybe I don't have the skills, or maybe I don't have the strengths to cope in that industry. So I think the most fundamental question somebody has to do is to sit down with a pen and paper and really list down what are my key strengths and what are my weaknesses, and what kind of industries are aligned with my key strengths.
A question to you, Ken. Call them the coronavirus businesses. Which ones are succeeding? The businesses that are succeeding during this pandemic, which ones are they?
I mean, definitely businesses that had invested in some digital infrastructure. So you're seeing the delivery companies are doing very well. There's a lot of home delivery businesses that are coming up well. But you'll notice even businesses that had been there in the brick and mortar fashion. Think of a company such as Art Cafe, and look at how they've really transformed their business towards home deliveries, leveraging on their digital channels. They are an example of a company that had been very proactive at the very beginning, had invested in a digital infrastructure, and I think when their numbers come out, I will not be surprised to see they're one of the best performing companies in Kenya. Look at the apps that are coming up, the Glovos. Look at any company that offers delivery services right now is actually doing very well. So that segment that takes advantage of that reality, because also even when you go back to the traditional sort of like the pre-COVID days, people will want to do their shopping online. People will want their goods delivered at home, because one of the challenges we have in Kenya is traffic congestion. So people will be like, I don't have to go to Naivas anymore. I can use the Glovo app and Naivas, buy all the Naivas goods, and they can be delivered to my house. So that's a service right there that a business can offer and do very well. So I think it's really about thinking out of the box and preparing Kenyans for that new normal, as you say.
So we are saying, Ken, it's not a matter of what type of business it is, it's the strategy you're using to advance your business and grow your profits. So basically what I'm hearing from you is right now people should look into deliveries. You've talked about the service industry in terms of the restaurants, eateries, like the Art Cafe. You've mentioned there a few companies, but I'm also trying to understand. But let's talk about starting a business. In COVID, during this pandemic, where do you start?
Well, the first step is you need to sit down with a pen and paper, and you need to write down what are your strengths and your weaknesses. So, for example, I can say I'm passionate about writing. I love traveling. So maybe I can begin a travel blog where I start writing about destinations that many Kenyans do not know about. Maybe I can get some sponsors, some hotels, some resorts to sponsor that. So that's a perfect business that's anchored on your passion, because the problem we have in Kenya is we have a copy-paste mentality. You see your neighbor doing one thing and you want to copy-paste it. I think the new thinking right now is you need to look inwards, inside of you, and ask yourself, in my short life, what are the things that I have done well? What are the things that have excited me? What are the things that other people have said I tend to do fairly well? And now how can I transform that into a business? So if I'm a writer and people say I'm a good writer, and maybe I love traveling, maybe I can start a travel advisory business, and I focus on domestic and international tourists who want to come to Kenya and need that curated advice on how to move around Kenya. That's already a service that could, and with the digital infrastructure, you could definitely have clients coming from abroad paying you in foreign currency, and also clients here in Kenya who want to maybe go beyond Mombasa, Nakuru, Naivasha, and try more. So that's a perfect example of a business that might be anchored on your strength.
Well, Ken, I think one of the questions someone would be asking right now is, where do I even get the motivation? Someone lost a job, their business closed down. Of course, there's the whole idea of, I don't even know what to do next. So where do you draw the motivation?
Well, that's a brilliant question. It can be very discouraging to lose a job, especially a job maybe you had been in for a few years. Human beings tend to have difficulty with managing change, and sometimes it can be quite difficult, just the emotions that come with it. But one of the key things right now is we are all forced to stay at home. So it's a time of rest. First, we need to rest a bit. You need to have a clear mind. You sort of now need to detox from maybe those previous experiences. And now you have to sit down and now in your cool, calm element, start really asking yourself, what is it that gives me goosebumps? What is it that I truly care about or am passionate about? And you start writing those things down. Maybe I love baking. Maybe I love doing arts and crafts. Maybe I love doing jewelry. You start putting those things on paper. Then now you need to sit down now with a mentor. You need to sit down with a mentor, and you need to find not just one mentor. You need a whole range of mentors, maybe about 7 mentors. And you need to have maybe coffee with each one of them and tell them, hey, I'm thinking of starting a bakery, for example. I think I've been doing it socially and people say my cakes are incredibly good. Maybe it's time now I want to start that bakery. So you need to now talk to business mentors, business experts, and you don't start from far. I always say charity begins at home. Talk to people within your family setup. There's always a business expert in every, whether it's not a nuclear family, the extended family. Talk to people in your neighborhood. Get somebody you trust. Get somebody who is of a reputable person, and start sharing your idea, with these people. And they start giving you tips on, maybe where can you locate it? How can you start? Where can you get capital? The biggest mistake entrepreneurs do is they try to walk alone. And you don't want to walk alone. What you want to do is have a group of trusted, reputable people who can be helping you, coaching you, and telling you about how to use digital channels, how to have a sales strategy, how to raise capital. So having those mentors is one of the most important things for a businessman or business lady.
All right, so Ken, you've gotten now a business idea, you've gotten motivation like we've talked, and you've come down to writing down a proposal, what you want to do, the kind of business you want to do. And like you've mentioned, very critical there is the idea of having mentors, because you're not an island, you can't walk alone, especially in the business world. But I think the thing now I would ask right now is, you have the idea and you've put together everything. So how do you monetize that idea from its infant stages to something that will generate an income or revenue for you?
Well, you have to understand that period is called the gestation period. This is the period between when you write the concept note, your business proposal, to the time you start making revenue. Now that period can be very short, or it can be very long, depending on first your skill, your ability to work with people, and also we also have to realize that business is also not for everybody. There are people who have a better orientation towards business than others. But what I can tell you, if you have that proposal, then now you start sitting down with experts in business. So you can look at, say, in my extended family, I have an uncle maybe who has done very well in business. Let me have coffee with him, let him tell me about his journey, and let him advise me. Maybe around my neighborhood, there is a business networking center. Maybe I can go and talk to a business expert, a business consultant, and such and such. Maybe I can start reading about global business, people who have done very well at the global stage. And this is where the internet comes in very readily. There's so many good stories of people who have started from scratch and have done very well. So I think the idea is to say you do not have the monopoly of wisdom. You need to start walking on the shoulders of other experts, tapping the wisdom of other experts. And that requires a lot of humility, because there's something called a founder's barrier. When the founder believes that he knows everything and cannot be advised, normally that's the beginning of the end of the business. But you'll find a founder who is humble, who is open-minded, and can easily take advice from other people and modify his business. Those people tend to do very, very well. So humility is such a big part in, especially when starting a business.
Well, Ken, just imagine perhaps there's a young gentleman or lady who now is saying, wow, Ken has given me the ideas of where to start, what to look at, but they're asking, so how do I access these experts? Because I need someone to guide me. Do you know of any persons or agencies or groups someone can actually be a part of, or try and tap into the knowledge from that is affordable as well?
Well, I always say, don't think too far. I always say start from the very home setup. Mm-hmm. I always say, first of all, the step one has to ask yourself, within your immediate neighborhood, within your network of your family, whether it's your nuclear family or your extended family, there's always one person out there. It could be your mother, your father, it could be a distant uncle, it could be a second cousin, but there's always somebody who has done a bit of business. And they can always, that should be the first step, because they know you as an individual, they know your strengths and your weaknesses, and they'll tell you, I think you're onto something here, or I think you need to change this and that. So you need to exhaust those immediate networks first. I think sometimes people tend to get shy about maybe sharing an idea with somebody in their family, but sometimes that is free information, especially if that person has run a business, is known to be a reputable person, is a wise person. That is free advice for you that maybe another person might be charged, but they're giving it for you for free because they're your relative. Number two is, now think in your community, in your neighborhood. Maybe you live in a particular area, and maybe there is a business networking. Like, for example, there's all these things that are called the business networking hubs. You could always go there and you could network with other business-minded people. In fact, they keep saying you need to start now making networks with other people who run businesses, because the mindset of an entrepreneur is very different from the mindset of an employee. So you need to start acclimatizing yourself to building social networks around people who actually run businesses. Then you could ask yourself, what about in my county? Does Nairobi County have any entrepreneur resources? And if you actually scratch the surface, there are tons of business hubs where people go and present their businesses, and such. So don't think of it that there's one person who will give you the silver bullet. Say, let me have 10 mentors from different, some are global, some are Africa, some only look at East Africa, some are in my village, some are in my network, in my family. So you have to have that broad sense. But I always say, start with what you have. There's always something what you have, then build on to the next level.
Well, Ken, as we come to a close of this discussion, futuristically speaking, for many people who are starting businesses, some whose businesses are still running, and of course, albeit through little profits as compared to what they were getting before. What would you say is the future of business?
Well, the future of business depends on really much how much the entrepreneur shapes it. If a founder is very forward-thinking, is able to see how the landscape is changing, is able to take in new information and readjust the business model, those businesses will have a very bright future, because there is so much adapting you'll have to do. You'll have to adapt with new forms of sales, new forms of marketing, using social media, digital panels. So if you are somebody who you feel you are open-minded and you can adjust with the times, those ones will tend to do very well. For those who find it very hard to adapt, for those who find it very hard to change their notion on business, for them it might be a struggle. So my key thing is read, talk to people, research, reach out to us here at Mentoria if you need to. But the idea is, can you take new information and adapt it? Right. Those are the people who tend to do the best.
Okay. Ken Gichinga, thank you for your time and for your wealth of knowledge.
Thank you always.
All right. Ken Gichinga there, Chief Economist at Mentoria Economics, talking to us about starting a business, of course, giving us an overview look of what is happening in the world of business in terms of the impact of COVID-19. Some few remarks there of hope for those who are planning to start businesses or those who are still running their businesses. All is not lost. There's still hope ahead, even post-COVID. Well, this has been the Morning Cafe with me, Lengari. Indeed, it is always a pleasure to have you join us. I know that many of you have been watching today. I'll just sample a few comments, one or two, because my director tells me that we have run out of time. And just a moment, we have here some comments from... We have Priscilla Maura just commenting here on one of the discussions. Thank you, Priscilla, for watching today. Of course, we also have Martin Karogo. Good morning. I'm watching from Nairobi West. I love your morning show. Thank you, Martin. And of course, we also have Matete Jr. saying politicians must go back and deliver to Kenyans. Our president has that right to remove those who are not ready to work with the government. Of course, we also have Samson Omukia saying we are following from Eldoret. Thank you so much for all of you who have been watching throughout the show. We indeed appreciate you. Keep watching. Remember, the conversation does not end here. You can continue engaging us through our social media platforms. That is TV47KE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My name again is Lengari. Have a lovely day and God bless.